how the DA had submitted an urgent complaint against the SABC, arguing that the broadcaster unlawfully rejected its political advertisement. The ad digitally depicted the national flag of South Africa burning, which sparked some concerns from not just the broadcaster, but the public as well. The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa has, however, fined the SABC for its unlawful refusal to broadcast the ad. Mudiwa Gavaza, who's business writer for the Business Day, joins us now to unpack this decision. And Mudiwa, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Oltano.
Mudiwa, this advert, I think I would have said so in my intro. It sparked outrage not only from other political parties.
Yeah.
Even South Africans were like, oh my goodness, you're burning a flag.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it wasn't just a politically motivated decision for the SABC to go in the direction that it went. It was also based on public outrage.
Yes, it was. And that's actually what the SABC says in its letter to ICASA. Because obviously the DA is the one that lodged the complaint, and you have the SABC that has to respond. And as part of the response, they said, well, firstly, we didn't want to, do anything that national symbols, around the desecration of national symbols. They spoke about the fact that there had been a condemnation by government and the president, and then they also spoke about the public outrage. Now, I'm not a
legal expert and the likes, yes,
like that, but fortunately, unfortunately, just because those three groups of people don't like something doesn't necessarily mean that it is wrong or that it is illegal. And that is what the Complaints and Compliance Committee of ICASA actually, then ruled to say, guys, this is a technically correct advertisement. They aren't contravening any of the regulations that actually are used as guidelines for political advertisements. And then they also further went to say in their judgment that there was no legal basis upon which the SABC could use its discretion to make a determination that they wouldn't, flight an ad. So that's the situation, that we find ourselves in. Obviously, earlier in the month, it caused a huge, uproar, online, and it was a subject of a lot of discourse in South Africa. And I think what's more interesting is that the SABC has issued a statement to say that they are studying the judgment, but from what I can see, they only have one more day, to study this judgment, because they have 7 days from the date that the judgment was issued and that was issued on the 22nd of May, which means 7 days gives you 29, which is tomorrow. Yeah.
I'm trying to unpack a little bit of what we do know about that Complaints and Compliance Committee's ruling. They basically said that if you've shown all political adverts, and now you need to show this one.
Yeah.
Is that the full argument, Mudiwa?
There's a lot that's being said, but the main tenets is what I've just described to you, to say there's no legal basis upon which the SABC can make its own determination. And then the second thing that they say is that political adverts, fall within certain categories. They have guidelines around which you should be able to make that you should be able to make these ads. And according to those guidelines, there was nothing wrong with what the DA's advert did. So that's basically, that's basically at the core of what the judgment is saying. Yeah.
This is democracy at work, the way that I see it. Some of the things that you can only hash out by really experiencing them as a country here. But I also want to then speak about, I guess, a precedent here having been set. We will be a few years away from another election. Thank goodness, it's been quite a ride. But what's been set here, I guess, is, I think, new boundaries have been set with how far political parties might be able to go with advertising. And this might mean that we might have to become a little bit more explicit in terms of how we regulate political advertising, what is seen as acceptable, what is not seen as acceptable, and even in the powers that a broadcaster like the SABC may have or may not have in terms of dealing with something of this kind.
You know what the difficulty is with this entire thing? Once again, I'm not a legal expert. But it's the contradiction, it's some of the contradiction along the way.
Okay.
Right. if we're to look at the flag as a national symbol that cannot be desecrated, but we still allow the flag to be burnt in protest, in physical protest on the streets, we allow for the burning of the flag, right? Then it becomes a bit of a murky undertaking, right? Imagine us tasking the country's biggest legal minds to make a distinction between burning off a flag in an advert versus burning off a flag in real life. And that's a typical occurrence in South Africa. Many protests are had, many burnings of the flag are had, right? So nothing new on that end. But for some reason, right, when you have a political party doing it and, you know, on a broadcast platform, then so you now enter murky waters. And it's not about the advert, it's the fact that this one is allowed, but why is this one not allowed? And then I think from a marketing point of view, right, there's two things that I think are quite key. Firstly, if you're going to talk about shock value or anything like that, then one could argue that, you know, the DA has achieved its goal. People are talking about it. I checked yesterday, that ad online on YouTube has 800,000 you know, views on its own, right? So people have gone.
People wanted to see.
People wanted to see. So whether you like it or not, you've brought attention to that. But I think going forward, we're likely gonna need to also talk about how do you regulate political advertisements. Firstly, there's the broadcast platforms, but what's interesting about this is I don't think anyone went and lodged a complaint with YouTube and said, hey, please take this video down, right? You sort of, because who's regulating, you know, some of that? And this is probably a piece of digital advertising that has also been, you know, sent around on WhatsApp groups, on Twitter, on Facebook, and all of these other platforms. But your complaint is with the national, is with the national broadcaster. So going forward, those are all some of the things, especially as some of your traditional channels, you know, are reducing in relevance, and the digital platforms are sort of, you know, going up in relevance. These are all the things, because maybe in the next election cycle, how many people will still be paying attention to what the SABC does versus what's happening online? So when it comes to that regulation, I think that's going to be one of the key things that lawmakers are going to have to grapple with.
Like I said, Mudiwa, just democracy at work. Thank you so much for your time today. It's always a pleasure. That was a technology correspondent for the Business Day, Mudiwa Gavaza.